Hey guys, welcome back to another video and happy Thursday. So it's the end of the week, so it's time to take a look at how the freight market has changed over the past week. We're going to be looking at volumes, we're going to be looking at rejections, diesel prices, and then we'll get into specifics for flatbeds, reefers, and dry vans to see how everything changed in the market for those specific equipment types and also where they need to go next week in order to be in a relatively better position than everyone else. Ready? Let's go! So as always, we're going to start by looking at the bigger picture to see how the volumes and rejections and diesel prices have changed in the general market, starting with capacity. So over the past week, we lost an additional 383 carriers net, which is the lowest loss we have seen so far this year. But nevertheless, we're still seeing that more carriers are leaving this industry than are coming in. Now, volume-wise, we are comparing to 2023 levels. In blue, we are the white line. And what we can see is that volumes are way higher than they were during this time period in 2023. However, we also see that the trajectory shows that volumes are on their way down. Rejection levels, however, are continuing to surprise me. You can see that we're way above the 2023 levels, but what's more interesting is that they're continuing an upward trend, and currently they're at 5.4%. But again, I do still believe that the big factor here is the weather, because capacity realistically, yeah, it's decreasing, but it's not decreasing at the levels that would drive rejections up so quickly. So what can make capacity leave the market this quickly? Well, people unable or unwilling to haul loads in crazy weather, right? But we shall see how this pattern continues. But for now, I'm liking this trend. Now, in terms of diesel prices that have been a source of good news for us week over week for the past 6 months, I feel like, something that we're seeing right now is that they changed course, right? They're at $3.95 per gallon on average, which is still 1 cent lower than last week. But you also can see that they changed directions. They're starting to go up. So hopefully it's just a blimp, not a trend. All right, now let's get into specifics, starting with dry vans, and we're going to look at the spot market volumes. So in terms of the spot market volumes, the blue line, which is us right now, we can see that there wasn't any significant change as of last week, but we can see that it's above the 2023 levels, which is nice because at least we are ahead somewhere. But unfortunately, that did not translate into higher spot rates for dry vans. As you can see, spot rates went down. They're around $2.17 per mile at the moment. However, we are still above the 2023 levels, which is nice. So again, the question of the day is, where do you need to go if you have a dry van in order to grab relatively better opportunities? And again, we're going to be looking at 4 maps by Sonar. First one is the outbound tender rejection rate. Then we have the volume index, the head haul index or load to truck ratios, and the inbound tender rejection rates. So the situation got worse from last week. There are only 2 areas where it's, significantly better. Number one is Twin Falls, Idaho. Almost 26% of the loads going out of Twin Falls are getting rejected. The index for volume is at 53. There are more loads than there are trucks, and there's an almost 16% rejection of loads going into Idaho. The second place is Green Bay, Wisconsin. So Green Bay has a 15.6% outbound rejection rate, a volume of 68. There are more loads than trucks, and the inbound rejection rate is at 15%. Now, even though those are the only 2 notable places where it's relatively better, if we step away for a moment, we can see that in general, the Midwest seems to be a relatively better area in general, right? There are usually more loads than trucks. The rejections are a little bit higher. There is some volume, and the inbound rejection rate is higher as well. Now we have reefers, starting with the spot volumes. Yikes. You can see that spot volumes for reefers have dropped down significantly as of last week, although still above 2023 levels, but way below that 5-year average at this point. In terms of spot rates, those also went down together with the spot volume. They're right at that 5-year average, a little bit above 2023 levels, and currently at $2.48 on average. So where do you need to go next week if you have a reefer? We're going to be looking at the same 4 maps as with the dry van. Number 1 is Twin Falls, Idaho. Rejection for loads going out of there is 31%. Volume index of 42. There are more loads than trucks, and the inbound rejection there is 32%. So 32% of carriers are rejecting loads going to Idaho, probably because of the weather and, of course, the road conditions, right? Number 2 is Fargo, North Dakota, where the outbound rejection rate is crazy. It's 50%. Half of the loads going out of Fargo are getting rejected. The volume index there is only at 20. There are slightly more loads than there are trucks, and inbound, it's 13% rejection. So not as many carriers are rejecting loads going to North Dakota, but yeah, for reefers, that's pretty much it. All right, last but definitely not least, let's talk about flatbeds. On the spot market, volumes did not change at all for 3 weeks in a row. As you can see, nothing changed for flatbeds. However, the flatbed rates have gone up a little bit and now are almost at that 5-year average. Currently, flatbeds are getting paid on average across all lanes, all distances on the spot market at around $2.40 per mile. Since I don't have those really cool maps by Sonar for flatbeds of where to go, I made my own using truck stop data. So first we're going to look at loads, how many loads are coming out of each state. As you can see, the lighter an area is, the lighter a state is, the less loads come out of there. The darker it is, the more loads come out of there. Now, there are some notable differences from last week. There was an increase in volume in Arizona, Kansas, Virginia, Georgia, Iowa, and New York, right? But there was a decrease in volume in Colorado, Washington, South and North Dakota, and Minnesota. The next question is, what is happening with flatbed capacity? How many trucks are there? So in terms of this map, the lighter it is, the less trucks there are. The darker it is, like Texas and Florida, for example, the more trucks there are. So capacity actually increased in Nebraska since last week, but decreased in Wyoming and Georgia. But the big question is, where do you need to go with a flatbed to have better negotiating powers? So for that, we're going to look at load to truck ratios. The red areas is where there's less than 1 load per truck. So there's overcapacity galore. The peach areas is 1 load per truck. Yellow, which is only Maryland, is 2 loads per truck, and green is over 3 loads per truck. So there is actually a huge difference from last week, because last week there was still a lot of red, there was still a lot of overcapacity, but there were way more areas that had 2 loads per truck. Now there's only 1. Most of the areas are either overcapacity or exactly 1 load per truck. In terms of Mississippi, Alabama, and West Virginia, it's pretty much the same as last week. There are over 3 loads per truck there. But yeah, in general, the map for the flatbed also became quite a bit worse from last week. So yeah, guys, that's it. We saw that rejections are still on their way up. No one knows whether it's just a temporary blimp, however you say it, or whether it's a pattern that is forming. But when we looked at the maps, we can see that the situation got worse for all 3 equipment types. There are not as many good markets anymore, and whatever markets there are, they got worse from last week. But yeah, we're going to keep an eye on it and see what happens next week. Anyway, wishing you all a fantastic weekend. Be safe, stay healthy, and keep learning. See you in the next video.